What's going on, War Eagle Nation out there? Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football once again. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. And as always, it is great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Okay, so this is the standard procedure for my channel to where we do a final prediction show of each game that's being played by the Auburn Tigers. This one is kind of hits a little different though, because there's so many different parts to the puzzle. Let's start at puzzle one. One, Gus Malzahn, head football coach, that, did this ridiculous dance after the Mississippi State game. So, we pretty much thought all was well. But where were you as an Auburn fan? I know where I was. I'm going to tell you where I was in just a second. Where were you when you got the news that Sunday morning? Well, no, not that Sunday morning. That Sunday afternoon that Gus Malzahn had been fired. And somewhat of, even if you were that Auburn fan that just as your Christmas wish list thought that Gus Malzahn should be fired, you were still in a state of shock because you didn't think it would happen. You just didn't think it was happening. I'll tell you where I was. I had taken a nap that Sunday night because I was actually going to do some content, as far as the bowl game and recruiting and things of that nature, because I always do my day after video after Auburn plays football. But then I had to shift my gears because after taking my nap, I was blown up with a bunch of text messages, saw this stuff online. I was like, man, these guys are absolutely kidding me. They are playing about this whole Gus Malzahn and being fired and all of that. No way Auburn fires Gus Malzahn in a pandemic after going 6-4, even though, it wasn't the most desirable thing, but it was nothing that just jumped out at you for sure that says Gus Malzahn should have been fired. So I go to social media, Google and all, and it was just flooded. Gus Malzahn out at Auburn. So now, moving on to number two, here comes the coaching search, which seems at the surface a bit of a debacle. Different names coming up every day. You're talking about Sarkisian, Urban Meyer, Lane Kiffin. All of these guys coming up out of nowhere. Hugh Freeze as a possible coaching change for Auburn. Billy Napier. I mean, all the names you could possibly imagine. 9 days later, Auburn hires Brian Harsin from Boise State. And here is the initial reaction from what I could see social media-wise from the fan base. I mean, the fan base was just exuberant. They were like, oh, man, we got a coach. After the debacle of the coaching search where some got interviewed, some didn't, some opted out, some thinking that Kevin Steele was going to be the next head coach. You had the whole hashtag no to Steele thing going on. So Auburn was relieved. Auburn fan base was relieved in a lot of different ways. They're like, okay, well, at least we know we don't have Kevin Steele as the coach. Got Brian Harsin. Who the heck is Brian Harsin? That was the going theme that week, or for that particular time. Who is Brian Harsin? Well, Brian Harsin is only the third winningest coach in college football currently. That's all he does out in Boise State. We'll get back to some of that in just a second. Now you have a situation where now it's game week. Prediction time for Auburn. Auburn is actually taking on a Northwestern team who is coming off of a nice campaign all the way to the Big Ten championship game when just a year prior they were 3-9. Now they got to feel pretty good about themselves because not only did they make the Big Ten championship game, but they kind of sort of almost beat Ohio State. We know who Ohio State is. Yeah, we know who they are. They're going to the college football playoff. Northwestern only lost to that team by 12 points, pushing that game to the limit. Probably in some ways, when you look at situational entities of a football game, probably had some really unique opportunities to win that game. So here we are, a day away from the Citrus Bowl. The Auburn Tigers take on a team that has high aspirations. You talk about a program over the last 15 years that has only ended the season ranked one time, almost winning a conference championship. I mean, you would think they would be a little bit motivated about this particular game. Now, I actually listened to a YouTube podcast a couple of days ago, and this is where the nation doesn't understand the SEC, Auburn, things of that nature. It was a podcast, I think it was on First Take, where Paul Feinbaum, this was actually clickbait on the low. Paul Feinbaum was listed in the title, but Paul Feinbaum did not give any commentary on this particular video. It was actually another guy that his name escapes me right now. But he said some things on the line. Shame on Auburn for firing Gus Malzahn in the middle of a pandemic where livelihoods have been lost, where the economic situation in America is absolutely abysmal, that we all know. Auburn decides to give a $21 million buyout to Gus Malzahn and really doesn't have a coach like Nick Saban to replace him. Gus Malzahn did an okay job. He didn't embarrass the fan base or the school, but you get rid of him in the middle of a pandemic only to hire Brian Harsin. See, what a lot of folks expected, as I do commentary on that particular interview, what a lot of folks expected is that Auburn probably had a big name in the bag if they were going to come up with the $21 million to fire Gus Malzahn, this home run hire, kind of like all of these terminologies, the sunshine pumpers, home run hires, all of these all this other stuff that comes up when you talk about college football, especially down in the Deep South. What that commentator, that podcaster doesn't understand is that Gus Malzahn was 0-12 against his rivals on the road. He did not win a lot of games between his rivals LSU, Georgia, and Alabama, which is unacceptable. Gus Malzahn, for all intents and purposes, really kind of dropped the ball because they only had 2 10-win seasons. That's not acceptable in Southeastern Conference play, especially on the level that Auburn wishes to compete against. Also, you have a situation where the expectations have become higher for Auburn because between 2010 and 2020, Auburn has participated in the national championship game twice. They have also participated in the SEC championship game 3 times. A lot of teams can't say that. So to continue in the direction that it appeared that Gus Malzahn was headed in might have been worth the $21 million. Might have also been worth the transitioning of a coach with the potential of Brian Harsin. When Nick Saban came from Michigan State back in the day and took his game to the next level, no one knew that Nick Saban would be who he was now. I think this is a situation where you have to give coaches a chance to show who they are. There have been coaches who have actually coached in the SEC, had some viable experiences in the SEC, and still have not had even the level of success that Gus Malzahn had as a majority high school coach. So that clause is thrown out the door. So let's get back to, that's another rant, but let's get back to this game with Auburn facing Northwestern in the Citrus Bowl. Auburn is actually depleted of some players. There's some guys that won't play. Anthony Schwartz, Jamian Sherwood, and Christian Tutt. A few other guys are questionable. Based on what I feel is going to be the core of the team, I'm looking at a situation where Auburn has an opportunity to win this game. I think they have the personnel to win this game. even with the depletion of the talent that won't be there for various reasons. I'm going to go bold here. I'm going to pick Auburn to win this football game because both teams don't do a good job of scoring in the first place. This is not a team that should out scheme Auburn with the defensive players that are in place, assuming that most of the core group is there. So I'm going to give it to Auburn. I'm just going to go ahead and just roll the dice on this one because there's so many variables that are unknown. I'm going to give Auburn this one in a 27-21 football. Well, actually 28-21 football game. I don't see why it would be 27. In a 28-21 football game, very entertaining football game. As long as Auburn doesn't have any costly turnovers early to deflate them like what happened against Minnesota, I think Auburn will be all right. Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast, talking Auburn football. I wish all of you a happy new year. Hopefully Auburn comes out with the win tomorrow. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.